Yeah. Hi, welcome to the National Critics' Choice Online News. We're happy to have our guest, Miss Sarah Price. She is a well-known author in the United States that has been written a good number of books on the Amish culture and romance. And in fact, Sarah has written actually more than 20 books on this, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes.
Sarah, welcome to my show, and please tell us more about uh, your passion and your impressions of Amish culture. Why did you first, uh, began your career that way?
Well, first of all, Robin, I want to say thank you to you and to all of your viewers. This is so much fun. I'm so excited about this. This is my first interview with Skype. So, yay, this is so exciting. Um, and yes, I've been writing about the Amish since I was 19 years old. So that's a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many years.
Mhm.
But one of the things that projected me, my interest, propelled my interest in the Amish is my own family heritage. And my family is Anabaptist by heritage, which means that my family came over to America from what was then called Prussia in the early 1700s, 1705, 1707, because they were being persecuted because of their beliefs in baptism by choice as adults. Now, let me fast forward 300, 400 years, and we have the same type of situation with the Amish, where the Amish and the Mennonites are Anabaptists, and most of them come from this heritage. From the 1700s, they came over to America, most of them settling in Pennsylvania, which is where my family is from originally. So understanding that background, that my family for, you know, 300 years in America and even more after or earlier in Prussia or Europe, that they were Anabaptists, that it's basically, I say it's in my DNA. I just grew up with Mennonite people, with my grandparents. My father was raised Mennonite. So when I was younger, we went to the Amish land, the Amish country of Lancaster County. And in Lancaster, that's where I fell in love with the Amish. So that happened when I was 12 years old. And I did begin writing when I was 19. And it's my passion. I love the culture. I love the religion. I love the people. And they're just the most fascinating culture to me that in today's day, in the age of such technology where I can talk to you sitting thousands and thousands of miles and time zones away, that they can really maintain a heritage that dates back hundreds of years. It's amazing to me.
Amazing. Now, there's a question from Malaysia. Miss Sarah Price, how do you define Christianity for the Amish? What is Christianity for the Amish culture?
That's a great question. And actually, not a lot of people have asked me that question. So kudos to our viewer in Malaysia. The Amish are no different than other Christians. They believe in Jesus. They believe he's our Savior. He is the Son of God. They also believe they have a very personal relationship with God. When they go to church, their prayers are quiet. Unlike I've attended a lot of different churches, just out of curiosity. When I attend Catholic churches, there's a lot of prayer that is very um, it's just a similar prayer that everyone's used to, and they say it out loud together. I know in some of the other churches, Baptists maybe, that they pray out loud together over each other, where for the most part, the Amish keep it contained to inside themselves. It's a one-on-one relationship. They also believe that God comes first, then the community and the family. But God always comes first. And that is ingrained in everything that they do. They are very charitable to the other people in their community. They're not judgmental. They don't say if somebody is Jewish or Hindu or Muslim. They don't pass any judgment on these people, and they'll accept them and they'll talk with them. And they also don't evangelize. And that's something that I was just talking with someone about on my recent trip to southern United States, about how the Amish don't go out there and try to recruit people to their faith. Faith is a choice, following their way of life, giving up the materialistic world and living as plain and simple as we can to be in tune with God is a choice that they don't try and push on anyone. And a lot of the shows that people might watch on cable sometimes have a different perspective. And I've lived with the Amish. I've stayed with them. I've had friends out there. I've lived in their houses. I can assure you that a lot of the shows that sensationalize the negative of the Amish are just doing that, sensationalizing the negative parts of maybe a few people, because every culture has people that are negative. No one's perfect. But as a rule, the majority of the Amish are just, they're the salt of the earth. They're fabulous people.
Another question, and that's from Korea. Dear Miss Sarah Price, why do they believe in living in simplicity? There's no electricity and so forth. Why do the Amish people prefer to live very simply as a lifestyle?
Okay, that's a very fair question, and people might wonder that because of all the conveniences that we have in the non-Amish world, the electricity, like you mentioned, cars, telephones, fax machines, computers, the internet. One of the reasons that they try to keep things simpler is because it creates a slower pace of life that allows for more prayer, more reflection, and also more focus on the family. Weekends on Sundays are meant for fellowship, for being with family, relatives, friends, and community. The electricity creates a convenience that once you start down that path for cell phone usage, telephones, television, it creates a separation of the family. And I'll give you a perfect example. At night in an Amish home, particularly in the winter time, where it's very cold and snowy in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, the family gathers in one room where they use kerosene lanterns to light up, and they might have a propane heater for the heat. If they had heat throughout the entire house or electricity in every room, the 8 to 10 children might be sitting in their rooms or be somewhere else in the house, separated and isolated. Instead, because of the way they live and the using electricity and having those conveniences, they stay together. And that allows them to share, to play games together, to read the Bible and talk about Scripture. It's a way of remaining close in a way that I don't know about in Eastern Asia, but here in America, there's so much convenience and ease of transportation that people aren't together anymore. We don't always have sit-down dinners and conversations. And after dinner, at least in my house, one child might go outside to play, one might go on the computer. My husband might even go back to the office, which for us, we have a horse barn. He might go back to the barn to check on the horses. So we aren't always together after dinner, and we miss quality time. So I think that's extremely core to them, the emphasis on closeness and family.
Amazing. Now we have a question from Singapore. Dear Sarah Price, what is the unique features or in terms of culture of the Amish? What are the three things that you have learned from the environment that you have lived with them before and still is today?
The three top things. Well, I think that's different than what makes them so unique. I mean, obviously, what's most unique about them would be their lifestyle, their mode of transportation, the horse and buggies. As soon as you're driving down the road toward Lancaster, and you see your first horse and buggy, there's something that happens inside of you where you just are so excited. There it is. There's the horse and buggy, and you can listen to the wheels humming on the roads and the horse, the rhythmic beating against the macadam. It sends chills up your spine. The way they dress, which does differ from community to community, and they're just basic lifestyle with the no electricity, the education. But that's not necessarily what I've learned about from them. And I think the top things that I have learned and I try to take away from them, and I'm not perfect, so I still work on this all the time, is this one-on-one relationship with God needs to be part of our everyday life. We need to constantly be thankful for the things that are around us, even in times of trouble. I know a lot of people turn to God in times of trouble, but we need to also turn to God and our faith when times are happy and blessed as well. So that's one thing I've learned from them. I've learned that the family should really be the core of our existence outside of the church. And I try to instill that more. And I have developed a much tighter relationship with my children and with my parents and my husband here in our house, where it's very important that we come together and we do talk, at least on a daily basis, if not always at the dinner table. Family is extremely important, and it's the strength of who we are, who our ancestors are, and who my great-great-grandchildren are going to be is determined by today, us being strong and united. And then I think the last thing that I always say about the Amish is there's a sense of peace and acceptance among them that whenever I go out to Lancaster, I feel this peace and I feel this acceptance, and I just want to capture it and bottle it up and just share it with all of my readers. And I try to do that with my writing because I believe that a lot of the readers, at least here in America, want that peace, want that acceptance of who they are and who the people are and their lifestyles. And society in itself is constantly pushing us to do more and to do better and to have the best. But we need to accept who we are. We need to accept our role and what God has given us so that we can be at better peace with everything around us. And I think that's missing from our society, at least here in America. And that's a lesson that is invaluable that I've learned from the Amish.
Amazing. There's a question from the Philippines. Dear Ms. Sarah Price, as you have written many books about the Amish culture and romance, um, can you explain to us what is the definition of peace and acceptance for the Amish that has influenced you, and what kind of role do you think that Christians should play, you know, in this fast-paced environment that we live in? Um, do you think that Christians today, especially in not only in the United States but for any developing world, are actually taking life or taking Christianity for granted?
Wow. That's a really heavy question. And
Take your time.
yeah, I'm not sure that I can actually respond 100% because I can't judge how other people worship or believe in God. Um, I have been extremely concerned and increasingly vocal and supportive of things that are happening overseas with people who want to be Christian and want to worship in peace and are being persecuted. I find that extremely just surreal that that's happening in today's world. I've been sharing a lot with my readers on Facebook and on Twitter my feelings about this. I wouldn't judge an individual. I wouldn't ever say anybody takes it lightly. But I also believe I have such a powerful belief that religion is not just going to church on Sunday. If you sit in a church on Sunday and you don't practice what you're hearing and reading and feeling on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I have a problem with that. I think religion goes well beyond just an institution. It's a way of life, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of feeling, and it's a way of acting. I give a lot of credit to these emerging countries or the emerging Christians in these countries. And I just read a book, and I'll have to email you the name of the book. It was an amazing, amazing book about a young man who his entire life is smuggling Bibles into places like China. I think he also did some with Vietnam and in different countries that Christianity is not, or at the time when he was doing this, was not accepted. And he was arrested and thrown in jail, and he didn't care. When he got out, he would go back to smuggling the Bibles. I think that's an amazing story. I don't think that people in the third world countries can take it lightly when they're really developing a whole new movement that in some cases threatens their lives. And they are today's true martyrs. They are martyrs in a way that in this country, America, I don't think that there's a real fine appreciation for it. Actually, behind me, where is it? There is a yellow book behind me, and that's the Martyr's Mirror. That is in every Amish household, and it is the stories of the Anabaptists from dating thousands and thousands of years ago, going back to the apostles, and how for the belief of Christianity, people were murdered, tortured, they lost everything. And the Amish and some different branches of the Mennonites, who are also Anabaptists, they read that on a regular basis to remember what people sacrificed for us to have the religious freedom that we have. So I'm not sure if that 100% answered the question.
No, it's okay. So anyway, Mr. Price, there's another question for you, and that is coming from Japan. Dear Mr. Price, tell us more about this book that you've written, First Impressions. Why do you call First Impressions?
Okay. I'm very happy to talk about First Impressions. It was a challenge for me to write this, and I love challenges. I love going outside of my comfort zone, trying new things. What I've been reading and seeing, the trends in the Amish Christian genre, is that a lot of the stories are the same. And a lot of the stories are an outsider coming into the Amish, them falling in love, a couple, having the conflict because of the different cultures or religions, and then overcoming that conflict. Sometimes it's an Amish girl or man who might leave the culture, but different variations of that. And I started changing a little bit of my writing storylines when I wrote my Clean Fame trilogy, which deals with the music industry and the Amish culture, and that was an amazing book, amazing trilogy, and yes, there will be more of that. But that led me to First Impressions, and First Impressions is a retelling of Jane Austen's classic Pride and Prejudice. And one of the challenges that I really wanted to conquer was returning literature, fine literature to the genre, to really focus on the character development, the dialogue, the descriptions, the attraction to the English language, the command of it, encouraging readers to also come outside of their comfort zone. A lot of my readers that typically read the Amish Christian genre had never read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. They hadn't read classics. And I get emails every day and messages on Facebook and messages on Twitter from people that because they read my first impressions, which is the retelling of this classic book, they've now started reading Jane Austen. I think that's fabulous. It's an amazing, amazing experience for my readers to think outside of their comfort zone and take on a challenging book like Jane Austen, her Pride and Prejudice. Coming out in February, I believe, is my second book called The Matchmaker, which is the retelling of Jane Austen's book, Emma. And that was a lot of fun to write. And I really enjoyed writing about Emma as a character. She's a little quirky, a little different, but always with the greatest of intentions. I really liked her. So that's coming out in February. And I'm currently wrapping up my third book in the series, which I'm not sure what it's going to be titled, but it's based on Jane Austen's Persuasion. So you asked, why did they call it First Impressions? Well, when Jane Austen first wrote Pride and Prejudice, she had called it First Impressions. And later, through a series of events, ended up changing the name to Pride and Prejudice. So that's one of the reasons that we called the book First Impressions, because really that's what it's about. It's about that judgment that people sometimes have when they make a connection and a first impression, and then through a series of events realize that first impressions aren't always what you think they are. So that's a little bit about first impressions, and I really I felt challenged writing it, and I feel like I emerged outside of just a writer and became an author who really could challenge my readers. And I think that's, to me, it was an amazing accomplishment.
Amazing. Now we have a question from Korea again, and that is, dear Mr. Price, could you tell us what are your 3 secrets in your writing, in your writings? How do you became successful in writing good books? What is your secret?
Oh, fabulous. I love that question. Okay, and I have exactly what the 3 of them are. First of all, I read constantly. I read every day. No one can be a good or great writer without reading. It's like being a musician and not listening to music. You have to read. It sharpens everything in your mind. It opens up new doors, creates ideas. Okay, so reading is one. The other secret, the second secret, is sacrifice. And I just actually posted about this last night when I sent one of my books off to a publisher, and how summer is over here. And I gave up so much in my summer that a lot of people might not be willing to sacrifice. I gave up barbecues, meeting with friends, going to the beach, going to the pool, gardening. I gave up so much because I write constantly. So I think it's really important that aspiring writers need to understand, actually anyone who wants to be successful in anything, that they say it takes 10,000 hours to do something really well. I say it takes 10,000 hours to write a good book over the course of your life. 10,000 more to be a great writer, and 10,000 more on top of that to be successful. So that's my analogy, is that it's just sacrifice. Okay, and then the third one is the third secret that I have, and this possibly unique to me, is when I write, I see everything as a movie. It goes through my brain as a movie. And when I start writing, I call it my zone. My children, my husband, everybody knows to leave me alone. The house could burn down. I'm in a zone where I'm watching the book in my mind unfold as I'm writing. It's almost like there's a voice telling me what to write. Call it God-given. It's just, I see it, and that's when I start typing and I write it. So I don't know how other writers do it. I know without the first two, you cannot achieve any success. The third one might be unique to people who are visual, where maybe some other people outline it. Other people might do drafts. They might do brainstorming. I have the idea. I know where the story's going to go, but a movie plays in my head, and that's what I write.
Amazing. We have a question from Thailand, and that is, dear Miss Sarah Price, what was the scariest and the most challenging aspect of visiting the Amish community when you did that for the very first time? Was there an experience of culture shock?
I did not have culture shock per se because my background, my family, was Mennonite, so I'm used to a less conservative environment that's very similar to the Amish. But I did have a challenge, and that challenge was the first time when I went out there, and that's being accepted within the Amish culture. And I'll never forget this. We didn't have cell phones back then, so I'm dating myself tremendously. But I stood on a payphone. Actually, it was the payphone, believe it or not, that was in the movie The Witness, filmed at Zimmerman's Market, which has subsequently closed. But for years and years, people would go to the Zimmerman's Market to stand in the payphone, and it was actually a real place with a real payphone. And I was trying to find an Amish house where I could stay and to learn more about the culture. And when I spoke to a gentleman at a newspaper, I don't recall the exact name. It might have been the Intercourse News, the Lancaster News. I'm not 100% sure the name of it. But it was a weekly newspaper geared toward the tourist. And he laughed at me, and he said to me, "You will never have an Amish family take you in, not only because you're not Amish, but because you're a woman." And that wasn't scary, but it was a challenge. And like I said earlier, I like challenges. I like stepping outside of my comfort zone. And I vowed to myself that I would overcome that challenge, and that would not be an obstacle. And sure enough, I found a place that had a little gross dotty house, which is a small house on the property that usually like an elderly couple or a newly married couple would live in. And it was vacant, and they let me rent it. And for several years, that's where I stayed. And later on, I actually rented a house with an Amish woman, and stayed there for on and off, because I have a family too here where I live. But I would go out there on weekends, spend vacations, visit with her. And I think that was a huge hurdle to overcome, because the Amish don't necessarily accept outsiders, and a lot of people want me to bring them to the Amish, and I won't do that because I respect them too much. They are very private. They don't want outsiders coming in. So over the years that I've been accepted into so many different communities and part of their holidays, their families, their gatherings, their worship, their funerals, so many things. That's an amazing, amazing accomplishment that not a lot of people will experience. I value that. I treasure it. I think that's part of God's blessing to me. And I hope, and I do believe, that my experiences, because they are so authentic in a way that most other people can never never will have that opportunity. I can share it with my readers who want to be there, to want to experience these things, but they can't.
I have a question from Vietnam, and that is, dear Miss Sarah Price, um, I would like to visit an Amish family and during my holidays. Is there any advice that you can give to us and to everyone on the network on how to gain respect, confidence, and acceptance by an Amish family to a foreigner like me? Uh, so, and is there any protocol to observe between male and female travelers?
Hmm. Okay, let me address the first part, and then I'll get to the gender issue. There are some places out in Holmes County, Ohio, where they have tours. And you can look these up online, and I probably have links on my Sarah Price author website. If not, I'll make sure I get them there, where people who have lived in the Amish communities have established relationships with some homes where you can actually go and share meals. I think that would probably be a wonderful experience for any of your viewers if they can get to Ohio. Plus, it's extremely beautiful there. It's gorgeous, and it's a lot different than Lancaster. It's not as crowded. It's a little more spacious. Although there are a lot of tourists in the summer months, but it's spread out, and it's also the largest Amish community in America. So that's a neat place. We always hear about Lancaster, but Holmes County, Berlin, Sugar Creek, wonderful places to visit. As far as the protocol goes, no photographs. They do not want their faces photographed. If you're at a distance and from behind or their faces can't be seen, that's okay. But that's a huge respect issue, not taking photographs of their person. And that goes back to the Ten Commandments, where they don't believe that the engraven image should be taken. So they don't like photographs taken. And I think treating them like regular people and being yourself, I think that's the best protocol. If you're curious, asking them, would you mind if I asked a couple of questions? And especially coming from Vietnam or Thailand, they're going to have questions. They might want to ask you questions and share information because they are curious people. And a place like Eastern Asia is a place they've never seen, so they might be very curious. So I think treating them with respect, understanding about the no photographs, and asking for permission before asking questions in case they don't want to talk.
And
That's
what about dress code? Is there any dress code to conform?
No, not necessarily. When I first started going out there, I would dress very plain and simple, dresses, and I wouldn't wear makeup or, would keep my hair pinned back. I have short hair now because of my recent issues with breast cancer, but I had longer hair and I would always keep it back. Now I go out there and I'll dress like I normally would. I wouldn't wear shorts. I will wear jeans. I usually wear a nice pair of boots. When I go to church, I always wear a black dress on the occasions that I'm invited to a worship service. But in general, I just, obviously I wouldn't wear T-shirts that have bad words on it. But I think your regular dress is fine. They know that we are individuals and we are not Amish. So we shouldn't try to dress like an Amish person. We should dress like who we are. But I always say with a little bit of respect for the fact that you're going into a place that is, amazing. It is unique.
Hi, welcome to the National Credit Stories Online News, and today we have Miss Sarah Price with us, who's going to give us a book reading from her book, First Impressions. Sarah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start at the very beginning. It's a very visual scene, and I think as you start listening to it, that you'll also get the idea of what I say and what I mean when I talk about how I visualize the movie and it begins to unfold when I'm writing. So Here's chapter 1. The reddish gold rays of the setting sun lit up the sky behind the roofline of the large white barn. The double doors to the hayloft were open, and 2 robins sat on them, singing a song of good night to the rest of the farm. The black and white Holstein cows lazily meandered through the back pasture near the stream, a few pausing to dip their heads and drink from the refreshingly cool water in the fading heat of the late spring day. One of them, a fat one with a white chain around her neck, looked up, her soulful brown eyes scanning the barnyard before giving a deep, investigating moo. A young woman wearing a rich blue dress and no shoes upon her feet walked down the lane. Her head was adorned with a white, heart-shaped prayer cap. A few strands of brown hair had fallen free from the neat bun that was hidden beneath the organdy fabric and clung to the back of her tan neck. 2 white ribbons hung from the cap, casually resting on her back as she walked, while 2 brown chickens ran in front of her, a rooster close behind. When the rooster saw the woman, he stopped and puffed his feathers at her, his neck bulging out as if ready to attack. "Scoot," she admonished, kicking her foot at the brightly colored rooster to shoo it away. As she approached the end of the lane, she paused, glancing around for a moment to ensure that no one was on the road before she stepped off the driveway, shaking the cool dust from her bare feet, before stepping onto the warm black asphalt of the road that led to town. It was the mailbox that beckoned her, a dented gray mailbox with a single nameplate resting atop the blanks.
Amazing. And that is the book from First Impressions by Sarah Price. And Sarah, thank you for sharing with us so much
Oh, thank you.
for this episode. And of course, for your upcoming book, in the next coming year or so, what can our readers expect? Would there be danger or more love in it?
The Matchmaker, which is coming out in early winter of 2015, was a fun book to write. It's a different kind of character than Jane Austen typically writes. The main character's name is Emma, and I'd mentioned earlier that I actually had the most fun with her, and I personally feel a kinship with her. She gets herself into a lot of situations that are her own doing, never with bad intentions, sometimes with outcomes that are a little, not always what she expects, and sometimes her plans backfire. It's more of a fun, light book, a little bit more of a focus on the character development of a young woman who actually changes and morphs into a mature young woman toward the end of the book. The process of Emma maturing over the book and suddenly realizing that she is not necessarily the center of the universe and certainly not the center of the Amish community it's a fun approach to the Amish that hasn't really been looked at before.
No, amazing. Now, coming to the Amish culture, if what will be the advice for anyone who studies the culture of the Amish? Where can they start from?
Well, I think the best place to start when trying to learn about the Amish is in reading a lot of the different books that are out there, particularly the Anabaptist history. There's a wonderful book, it's very old, called Fire in the Zurich Hills. I might have that wrong. I'll have to send you the name of the book. And I have it actually somewhere. But it's a wonderful book about the history of the formation of the Anabaptist religion over in old Europe in the early days. Another book that I always recommend if people really want to learn and understand about the Amish is this book that I have in the back here. It's Grab this one. Oh, it's a big one, okay? It's a big one. It's not going to be an easy one-night read, but it's called The Martyr's Mirror. And this book is in every single Amish person's house, as well as the homes of Mennonites and other Anabaptist religions as well. And this book documents their history. So I think that that's a really good place to start, because if you understand their history and what they read and what they teach their children, people who really want to learn about the true Amish, that's the best starting point. And then, of course, you have a lot of the fiction books that are out there. Some of the authors have, like myself, firsthand experience living among the Amish. And I think those are really great places to start, with people who have that authentic experience living and communicating and maneuvering among the Amish and have been accepted into that culture and that religion.
Amazing. Another question that they have right now is that, dear Miss Sarah Price, and this question is from Singapore also, and that is, in your book, First Impressions, and your following book coming up, if there is, which there's going to be, what is your favorite cuisine that will be no, that's mentioned in First Impressions and the following books? Is there any food that you love that you can't live without?
I love pretty much all of the Amish food. And remember that I was raised in a Mennonite family. My grandparents, my aunts, even my father was born and raised Mennonite. So I'm used to that style of cooking. There are probably three things that I just absolutely, if I could be plopped on an island somewhere and I had these three things, I would just absolutely be happy as could be. The first is meadow tea. It's a special iced tea that the Amish make. Actually, I have my aunt Evie, who's still lives in the same town that my father was born and raised, makes the best tea, meadow tea. And it's from actual leaves that are out in the garden. And when the Amish make the meadow tea, it is just absolutely, I could just drink it forever. It's so refreshing and different tasting. So that would be the meadow tea. And my other two things that I absolutely would just love is canned beets, which sounds kind of like a strange thing, but they make canned beets that are in these glass jars, and it's a little vinegary and a little sugary, and it's just, I could have that every single night. I could have it every single night. And thankfully, the rest of my family is so sick of having canned beets, the pickled beets, that nobody else will eat it. So when I buy them, I get to have the entire container. So that's an extra benefit. And then finally, my favorite food since as long as I can remember, has been mashed potatoes. Great home-styled mashed potatoes. And when they make it on the Amish with the real cream and fresh homemade butter right from the cows on their farm, you can't beat it. It's just absolutely the best you will ever have. And those are my three things I could survive forever on.
Amazing, and that's how everyone's going to conclude. And so, Miss Sarah Price, thank you so much for sharing with us about the Amish culture and your great book, and more to come. Uh,
Yes, more to
and o-
come.
and of course, one of the final questions that we're going to ask you is, will there be a different style of fiction writing that you will be that you're working on at the same time?
Yes, actually, I am. I have begun exploring some young adult fiction. I have a book that's coming out. It's scheduled to release by Christmas time, and it's for young adults. And it's going to be, I think, extremely popular with young ladies, probably within the 13 to 17 age range,
Mhm.
dealing with a lot of their emotional development in dealings with social media. And I think it's going to be extremely well received by their mothers as well
Hmm.
to help explain what these young women, their daughters, are going through with the texting, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram.
Hmm.
And I'll give you a little hint, although I can't say too much, that it is going to be written with someone else. And this is someone that a lot of the young women that are out there are going to know the name, and they already have been communicating with this individual as part of this social media world of online celebrities. So it's going to be very interesting.
Amazing. And speaking about social media and online world, and I know that everybody's dying to ask, and that question is, what is your opinion about the social media and and the internet today? Is it good? Do you think that in your opinion, uh, finding a right partner on a social media is a good thing?
Well, that's two questions. So let me start with the beginning. Is it good? And I personally believe I'm a very technical person. I'm technology savvy. I grew up very young, 40 years ago, and was programming in BASIC when I was in second grade. So I'm very technical from that aspect. I love the internet. I think social media I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think we haven't seen its full potential. And I also believe that there's a dark side to the internet. And I think that's going to be explored in this other young adult book that I'm working on. When we look at how a lot of these young people haven't developed social skills in dealing with problems or reality outside of the computer screen or the little texting, the iPhone or the different smartphones that are out there. And I think it creates some isolation and some development issues that need to be addressed. I also think it's very hard to police the internet, so you don't always know what your children are doing out there, and that can also be a dark side. On the other hand, without the internet, I couldn't be talking to you. Halfway around the other side of the world, I wouldn't be able to talk to you or the readers that are out there in East Asia. So there's always a good side, and we have to always look at the bad side and be prepared.
Hmm.
As far as partnering on social media, I do believe that. I have a very strong Facebook following for my Amish books at my Fans of Sarah Price page. I'm trying to work with Twitter more because as I travel more, as I'm meeting more of my readers and I'm off site, it's easier and it's more real time for me to use Twitter. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to build up the Twitter because it's a lot more convenient for me to constantly be on Twitter to interact with my readers than to always go onto my page to update and give, daily updates once or twice a day.
One more question. That is a very curious one. How do you overcome cyberbullying? How do you overcome cyberbullying? Especially is very common even here in Singapore, where young girls are bullied on the cyberspace.
Um, well, that's a great question, and I'm I actually speak in October. I do a lot of speeches about breast cancer,
Hmm.
and I also speak about cyberbullying, and I actually have a book that is out about that. It's a series geared toward young adults that right now it's compiled together. It's called Priscilla's Story. And having been cyberbullied, um, I can honestly say that it is one of the worst experiences a person can have. It is a helpless feeling, and even to this day, I live in fear um, of the person that I'm afraid might reappear. And I'm not the only person that this individual cyberbullied. She went after a couple of other authors, And at one point, I had the FBI, I had police, detective, lawyers involved, um, and it was a very hard period of time. So my advice about cyberbullying is there is only one thing that you can do. Smaller, younger, underage people who are cyberbullied have to tell authorities. They have to let people know what is going on because at least here in the United States of America, it is illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to be cyberbullied. However, if you are an adult and you are being cyberbullied, my advice is to notify the authorities, but also to block that person and do not engage. Do not respond. These individuals like to get the response. They like to feel self-empowered importance, and that is one of the reasons that they come after people because they want a reaction. Don't give them the reaction. Don't give them the satisfaction.
And that's a good advice from Sarah Price, author of First Impressions. And folks, please do log on their websites or even on Sarah Price's page and order her book, First Impressions, with Amazon.com as well. And also, you can also get her book at all good leading bookstores. I'm Robin Steinberg. This program is sponsored by Charisma House. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.